Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 217 review. This was a normal 2-week sprint. Let's get started. I'll start with the overview, Jeffrey on the UI, Adam on the providers, and I'll finish up with the platform. As you can see, this sprint was a normal sprint with 65 PRs merged this sprint. And 23 were bugs, 18 enhancements, and a smattering of the rest. And over to Jeffrey with the UI.
Hey, in this sprint, 16 PRs got merged into the classic repo and one into the UI components repo. I can explain about them in the following slides. Amal fixed some of the accessibility violation checks in the chargeback assignment page. Next slide. In the confirmation profile pages, when we hit the advanced search button, the model box was not being loaded properly. This was due to few routes configuration was missing, and David had added them to fix this issue. Next slide. David marked the switch labels for translations in the settings, regions, tags inside the add category form page. Next slide. There was an issue reported in the instance pages that when a filter is applied and when we visit the instance providers, the filters is still applied, but there was nothing mentioned about what filters and what filters are applied and how to clear them. And Akhil had fixed this, and you can see from the after screenshot where the filters and the cleared link is visible. Next slide. Another issue was reported inside the task page where the task status checkboxes and the list was not properly in sync, and Gilbert had made a fix for this. Slide. The AutoSC team separated the access restriction for the catalogs item, and corresponding PRs were merged into the code and the schema repos. Next slide. The embedded workflows automation type was included in the service dialog drop-down field options under a prototype flag. A related PR was also merged inside the UI into the UI components. Next slide. A similar change was also introduced into the service catalog forms under a prototype flag. We introduced the embedded workflow options for the provisioning, reconfigure, and the retirement entry points. Next slide. All the other PRs are related to Cypress test cases from Gilbert and Jason. Gilbert had fixed the logout test by providing the correct redirect URLs and placing the correct status codes. Jason deleted some video compression configurations. Jason also added the Cypress to GitHub Actions. And then Gilbert fixed failing dashboard tests and refactored tests to make them less dependent on each other. That's all from UI side. Over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. This sprint in the Kubernetes repo, we fixed a bug where the pods started at and finished at times were always nil. This is the result of checking for symbol keys in the hash when they were coming in as string keys. So we got that fixed up, as well as adding specs to cover that case. For Rev, we fixed a bug where the Rev network manager was shown as an option when you're going to create a standalone network manager. This is due to spurious supports create in the network manager, simple one-line deletion to get that fixed up. For workflows, we set the flow runner based on the platform that we are running on. And so if you are running as podified, then Flow will run with the Kubernetes workflow runner. If you're on an appliance, it'll run Podman. And if you're doing, if you're on a development system, if you have Podman, it'll use that. And if you don't, it'll use Docker. We fixed a bug with the workflow instance output not being set when a workflow completed. This was introduced as part of some earlier changes. Noticed it when we went to test the dynamic dropdowns, so we got that fixed up. And we also fixed a bug where workflow operations were being queued on the embedded Ansible role. This is due to the configuration scripts originally being part of embedded Ansible. Next slide. And for the flow gem itself, we're setting workflow output on completion as part of the workflow class. This just makes it easier to get the final output without having to dig into the context and all of the states, which is where the only place the output was previously. Keenan fixed a bug where if you had an actual kubeconfig file in your home dir, it was being picked up for spec tests and causing them to fail. So he got that fixed up. We fixed a bug where the context default value was a hash, which was the way context used to be until we added it as a proper class. Also got to clear up a double JSON parse just to clean that up a little bit. We fixed a bug where entered time and finished time for the state was not in UTC. And we switched to a more accurate clock in order to time how long states were taking. However, it wasn't possible to use that to get the wall clock time. It was only basically nanoseconds since the system started, and there was no way to convert it. So we switched to using time.now for enter that and finish that. We also refactored some of the input output path handling to clean up some of the other states. And we also simplified next state handling so that we're only returning the state name from the specific state for the next, rather than looking it up in the list of states. And that is it for providers. Over to Jason.
Hey, on the platform side, we had a number of enhancements. First, I changed the plugin setup to more closely match core setup. This was actually more of a refactoring, but it helped fix a couple issues where plugin we couldn't do setup in plugins. The bot created translations for the English PO file. Joe added a change to add inflections and acronyms, which work pre-Zeit work and post-Zeit work. This is toward his Zeit work that's almost done. Adam added Docker and Podman as known commands so we can detect the Docker Podman presence of those binaries so that they can automatically choose. Joe enabled the notifier role by default. Previously, it was off by default, and then many people would set up their SMTP email and nothing would work because you needed the notifier role. And since most people want email, we're enabling it by default. Keenan added a change allowing supports feature to work without requiring supports not. This is a cleanup change, but it allows us to not have to declare every single feature all the time in the code. By default, everything's off, and only if you turn it on is it on. This is another bot change for the English translations. Adam added a change to allow configuration scripts to be used for service template provision tasks. This is another change towards the workflows. And finally, Jay added the separation of role access restrictions for service templates, which allows you to give catalog items different permissions than the rest of the items when you're trying to do RBAC on them. On the bug side, Jay then followed up with a fix on those restriction type methods for that PR. I fixed the problem where migrations being run from a plugin were just broken. Brandon had a performance change where he changed it to filter storages in the database rather than Ruby, so via SQL. Keenan had a change to pre-cache rollup values to prevent us from calling references multiple times on the same objects. The I18N version was upgraded to a version that now works. Previously, we had it pinned to a version that had a problem. Adam fixed a change where workflow operations were queued on the embedded Ansible role, and now they're queued on a correct role. And finally, I updated the Python IP address package based on a bug that was found on the old version that we were using. Finally, on the other side, with technical debt and refactoring, Keenan made a change in the virtual attributes to more consistently use symbols throughout the code. He also made a change to remove the container group old container project ID, which was no longer used. So there's a core PR and a schema PR there to remove that. Keenan added MIQ expression target equality. This is mostly for specs, but allows us to compare two MIQ expression targets within those specs more simply to ensure that they are the same thing. And finally, for the multi-repo script, I added a synopsis to all the scripts. So when you do help on multi-repo, it actually tells you what the individual scripts do. And we had a number of documentation PRs this sprint. IBM Power VC events, a document article was added on how to enable those, since there is work that needs to be done on the Power VC side in order to do that. I fixed an issue where the old V2 key method, which has been removed for a number of releases, was still present in one of the examples. And a change was made to remove the scheduling of database backups from documentation. The actual code was removed a long time ago, but we forgot to take it out of the documentation. And that's it for the platform side. And that's it for the Sprint 217 review. Next Sprint 218 review will be on August 9th at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank all the contributors to ManageIQ, all the presenters today, and the entire community. Thanks, everyone.